Okay, it's good evening
Good morning.
for me. Good morning there, Monday morning there in the UK. I'm very, very honoured today. Welcome everybody to this morning's call at the Learn Free conference. So what are we doing? We're bolder, freer, louder. And now we're going to be listening. We've got the privilege to listen to Heidi Steele. My name's Heidi Conway from Australia. So Heidi introducing Heidi. I just love it. And I'll let you know that she was a former teacher, has 4 children, now unschooler, and has been unschooling for 10 years. So became disillusioned with the traditional education and from the paradigm of traditional education, and then moved from that classroom. So made lots of changes over the years, I would imagine, and would love to hear more about from Heidi Steele about ditching school, well and truly as a teacher and as a parent, ditching school and discovering learning. So from Live, Play, Learn, please welcome Heidi Steele.
Oh, that was a big introduction. I feel like it needs a big round of applause to go after that. Grand. I don't need a round of applause. Thank you, Heidi. Oh, look, you little clap. Thank you for that lovely introduction. Yes, you're right. I have 4 children. I say I've been unschooling for over 10 years, but my children have never been to school, and my eldest is 15. So I always, some people like the, compulsory school age is like the marker of when you sort of officially started. But in fact, my children have never been to school. So we've really been sort of in this zone, if you like, for 15 years. So I've got 4 children aged 15, 13. They keep having birthdays. I have to try and remember how old they are. 15, 13, 10 and 7. And as I've said, they've always been unschooled as well. We were quite keen, or quite if you're talking about being bold and loud, we were quite convicted in what we were doing, but really in a very like initially at the beginning in a very relaxed way, not like in a offensive way, but just in a my children had lived and learned happily up until the age of 5 and were just playing, and we were having a really lovely time. And I could reflect on all the things that they had learned during that time. And as you said, my background was in education. So I had done a lot, and particularly reception, which in the UK is age 4, so 4-year-olds coming into school, and a relatively play-based sort of approach, particularly in comparison to how that then changes as they go up the school. And I had done a lot of research, and a lot of my trainings in child development and play as a mode for learning, and that really informed my decision to create this space where my children could continue to learn in that way. So I sort of had this dual aspect where I was in school and I was witnessing things that I thought were particularly unhelpful in terms of children's mental health and development, and sometimes the way that they were treated. And I don't even mean that in an openly sort of abusive way, but just little things where you could just, and I'm sure parents can relate to this, some parents that I work with tell me that their children's lights went out, they just became really flat, and it changed the way they interacted with the world, and how they were as small humans. So I saw that, I witnessed that on a day-to-day basis. And then the other aspect was that the study that I had done that was then informing my decision to say, actually, there is another way, and that's what we're going to choose to do. And at the start, I didn't know any home educators, and I didn't even know that unschooling was like a term that would be a really good fit for us. But it turns out that I entered the home ed community, and I found other people that were equally sort of embracing this way of learning, and we continued on our journey, because as this presentation is going to point out, there are things that will change along the way, and they don't all happen overnight. But I've got some tips for you, so I'm going to share this presentation with you today. No, I've not shared. Hang on. Technical hit. I didn't press. Did I press the share button? No, I didn't. I'm pressing it now and nothing's happening. Let's try again. Aha, there we go. Okay, I am sharing this presentation with you. Come on, you can do it. I'm going to go back a slide because it's just missed, in case people don't know who I am. What's that? Here we go. In case people don't know who I am, my name is Heidi Steele. I predominantly hang out in live, play, learn spaces and give unschooling support for parents and families. So as a general rule, live, play, learn is the place to look for me or to type into your search engine. So I'm available on Ko-fi, which I always pronounce Ko-fi, and then I realised it's obviously taken from coffee because it's based on one of those buy me a coffee things. So I'm not quite sure if it's maybe supposed to be pronounced coffee, but there we go. I'm on Facebook. That's where you can get like daily chat and daily posts and things. Live, play, learn. That's where you can find out. There's a blog there, and you can find out about other services that I provide, and unschooling conversations for those that prefer to have an audio or find that easier because that's something you can do while you're, with the children or making dinner or, out in the woods. So there's that option for you as well. So today we're going to talk about ditching school and discovering learning. It's a little bit of a reflection of my own journey, but also from what I have gathered and known and hear stories about from other people that have been on a similar pathway. So it's school elements you can ditch right now. And I've ended up picking really big ones. Okay, so if we're going to talk about being bolder, this is a move into being bolder, people. They're really big things. And if you're new to the idea of self-directed education and unschooling, I would really sit with these ideas and think them through. And I am going to talk through them. I'm going to talk through like why I've picked them and what that looks like. So I'm not just going to give you these ideas and leave you, but hopefully to demonstrate a little bit about how natural learning can be really magical and how to sort of unleash that in your children. Oh, there we go. What you can do to release true learning in your child. Okay, I'm just going to move. I've got a funny view where I can, there we go. Right, so let's think about it being time to move on from school. For whatever reason you have come to a position where you're choosing to home educate, predominantly it comes with the idea that school isn't the place for your child. It might be a philosophical reason. So for me, right from the outset, it was I didn't agree with the education system. So philosophical reasons about how I thought education and children should learn. Or it might be that you've had a particularly bad experience, or your child has had some bad experiences in school, and that has informed your decision or put you in a position where home education is an option for you. And I've started with the first slide, like I've just put it all on the first slide. And I will unpack it, I'll go through it all. Okay, so up in blue are the things that I'm going to suggest that you ditch, like the things that, like when we're coming into home education, let's just strip it all back and let's get rid of school. Okay, so curriculum, it's a really big one. I'm going to talk about it. It's a really big one to let go of, but I highly recommend letting go of curriculums in the first instance. And then so down in the orange, we've got, well, what are we doing instead? Right. So we've got to, if we're removing something that feels like a really big thing, we don't want to leave a big hole. We want to know what are we doing instead, right? So what we're going to be looking at instead is the idea of interest-based learning. Okay, and as I said, I'm going to talk you through these things. So the second thing that we're going to ditch is an idea of defined learning spaces. So the idea that school is a place where you go to learn. And then we're going to look at learning spaces, and we're going to think about how we can actually make a personalised learning environment for our children. And then lastly, this is again, I told you there were really big ones, rewards and consequences. So we're going to have a look at why they're so important in school, why we're so familiar with them, and why they're like, you know, broadly used throughout our society. And we're going to look at a new way of connecting with our children, because there's a big shift when we go to home educate all the time, in that we are now with our children 24/7. I'm going to share a little bit about my story and about how we move from this idea of rewards and consequences, and why, what was the catalyst for us to do that, and then what we're doing instead, and which I've summed up as connect and collaborate. So if you're unable to join us for the rest of the presentation, I've basically put it all here on one slide, but I would encourage you to stay with it and find out a little bit about why I've chosen these things, and why I think they're important, and the difference that it will make to your child's learning. So let's start by taking a closer look at curriculum. In the UK, we have a national curriculum. It was devised in the 1980s, and it was to ensure that children across the country were receiving an education that was broad and balanced. You might recognise these phrases if you are familiar with the Home Educators Guidelines, which I encourage you to be familiar with. So the national curriculum was had these aims to make sure that the curriculum or that children were receiving an education that was broad and balanced, and that was standardised across year groups. So the idea being that if a family moved house, they weren't receiving, you know, having like lessons in one thing in one place, and then when they moved, they were repeating something they'd already done, or, you know, like this idea of missing out, you know, they'd missed out on something because they'd moved. So it was sort of that standardisation across year groups. And the aim of the curriculum is set out what needs to be learnt and when that needs to be learnt. And the teacher's role in that is to deliver that. So a teacher has some flexibility in terms of how that's presented, what activities are done, but the curriculum sets out what children need to learn, and like I said, when. And over time, that has, particularly in literacy and numeracy in the UK, that has been micromanaged. So now, particularly, as I said, with literacy and numeracy, if you go to school, if you go to one school on one day in one place in the UK, and you go to a different school in another place in the UK, it is highly likely that they will be learning exactly the same thing in literacy and numeracy. So it's now micromanaged right down until the exact day. And it operates on this idea that learning is like a ladder. So it operates on this idea that there's something we're trying to achieve. So in education, the most obvious thing is like a GCSE. We're trying to achieve a GCSE in physics, or a GCSE in music, or a GCSE in literacy. Okay, so that's the aim. And then it's broken down. Well, what do I need, or what does the child need, the pupil need, to achieve that goal? And they break it down into steps. So it's very much like a ladder. So all the way from reception, when your children first enter school in the UK, year one, it's all about, right, what does year one need to teach, that bottom rung of the ladder, in order that they have the knowledge and skills that they need to then be able to go up to level 2 of the ladder, and then level 3, and so on, until you reach this goal of being able to accomplish a GCSE. So the ultimate goal is to lead you to this complete knowledge and understanding, and then they split it up into subjects for the child to learn through. But what we want to do is take a look at what life would look like without a curriculum. What do we do without a curriculum? Because, as I said at the beginning, there is another way, and that's this self-directed way of learning, which particularly when it's within the home, that's when we sort of call it unschooling. What does that look like? Oh, I can't find my cursor. There it is. Okay, so interest-based learning, that's what we are aiming for. So what we're doing is we are shifting someone else being in charge of the learning. And if it's not someone else, something else. So a curriculum is the thing that is setting out what you're going to learn. And we want to move that. We want to enable our children to discover learning for themselves. So not someone else or something else telling them what learning should be and what they should learn when, but them discovering for themselves what they want to learn, what they're passionate about. And we call that sort of intrinsic. There's an intrinsic element to that, where they are driven by their own inner passion, their own natural curiosity. So instead of following a curriculum, what we want to do now is do more of what your child enjoys. Next point, it's not going to look like school. It really isn't. You know, my children have enjoyed a vast number of things during their former years. You know, we've had extensive periods of Lego. We have so much Lego in the house, I'm pretty sure I could build a full-size house of Lego. You know, Pokemon Go. We've had in-depth interests in Minecraft, which have led us all over the place looking at geology, you know, physical geology in the land, as well as museums, and you're looking at rocks and such the like. But those are things that are not on a school curriculum. It will quite often look like things that maybe we feel a bit uncomfortable with because it doesn't look like school, because we don't recognise it as something of value, because of what we've been told about what's important, because we were at school and we were taught via a curriculum and we were taught that these subjects are important. But actually for our children, it will look a lot like things like gaming. It will look like playing for a really long period of time, years and years and years, when you don't enforce them to learn things that someone else sets out. And I've put down, it will look like asking really odd questions, because they're going to be curious about things and notice things in the world around them that maybe we sort of take for granted because we're really familiar with them, or things that don't necessarily interest us but do interest them. So they'll ask things that for us are maybe a bit quirky or maybe seem a bit left field for us. And that learning can physically look chaotic. It can look physically very messy, you know. So we've had days where we've had slime making going on, Lego going on, you know, Barbies are in the bath. It can look very, very chaotic, and it can definitely look nonsensical, because without that ladder setting out what's going on in order, we can't foresee, you know, and we don't have the safety of foreseeing where this is going. And it might not look like that ladder. In fact, it won't look like that ladder. It's going to look really nonsensical. Like I said, you know, 1 minute you can be doing slime, then you can be doing Lego, then you're playing Barbies, then you're at the park, then you're online with your friends. It doesn't have always have this step-by-step situation that makes us feel comfortable, because we can see the logic. Because learning is no longer divided into these neat subjects, or this step-by-step progress outlined for us. Okay, learning now looks more like an intricate web of connections. So what our children are doing is building connections in their brain. In fact, this is what this is a picture of. It's these little shoots of connections being made, but they're making their own connections based on what they already know and the questions they're asking and the things that they're observing and the things that they're doing. So they're making up this intricate web of learning, and therefore it is as individual as your child is. And as anyone knows who's got multiple children, you know, our children are all different, despite maybe having a similar gene pool, or despite living in the same home. The way they interact with the world is more complicated than just saying you know, they've got, you know, the same parent, or they live in the same house. How they view and interact with the world informs their learning, and they are so individual, and their learning is really individual too. Right, so let's take a look at these learning spaces. So schools have inadvertently taught us that there are special times and special places where you go to learn. Like it's a thing, you know. So we have this idea of it being about concentrating. It's about working hard. It's about sitting at a desk. It's about going to a place specifically to learn. Or if that's not a physical space, it might be like an online space. Like you know, we go to I'm trying to think of some websites, but Khan Academy, you know, so we go somewhere specifically for the purpose of learning. It's taught us that what we need is a room or a desk, a designated space specifically for this purpose. So one of the things that quite often happens with new home educators is they set up this beautiful room, or even if it's just a little space, like a nice desk, and they've got the pencils there, and you know, the posters on the wall, and it does look beautiful and it is lovely. And there are situations where children will want their own space, okay, but what we want to actually move away from is the idea that that space is the only place to learn. That is where you go to do your learning. So schools have sort of taught us that there's a division between what is learning and what is not learning, which is reinforced by this space, you know, this place where you go. So when we leave those places, we have this idea that, oh, we're not learning anymore. What we're actually doing is we're playing, or we're taking a break, or we're just engaging in a hobby. And again, when we look at the value of things, those things then have less value in terms of learning. We perceive those things to have less value. And schools have taught us that some places have more learning value than others. So for example, when my children go to gymnastics, other people will view that as a valuable learning experience. But when I say we've been to the cinema, that holds less value. In fact, it goes in the taking a break, you know, that's a hobby, watching films. So we tend to value different places and different activities, which is a direct result of something that school has inadvertently taught us. So let's have a little look at what learning looks like outside of school, or what it can look like outside of school. Because outside of school, learning happens everywhere, and learning happens all the time. So what you can begin to do is tailor your children's learning and their learning environment to their needs. So I've put down some examples. So if they want to move around all day, which typically young children do, it's really counterintuitive to ask a small child to sit down all the time. I say, so particularly young children will really want to move all the time. And it might be like a big physical movement, or it might be a fiddling, might be a sensory thing that they need for regulation. But if they want to move all day, you can now provide environments where this is possible. Okay, so you can go to the woods, or you can go to the play park, or you can introduce equipment or games into your home that enable movement. So we play the floor is lava quite a lot. We set up little obstacle courses in the garden, or you know, around the house. Lots of opportunity for physical movement. And my children, in fact, two of my children, quite often, if they choose to watch something like on the TV, they will quite often do it watching upside down. You know, these are all things that we can now be relaxed about, and you know, allow and facilitate within our homes. So if they need personal space, for example, they need that quiet, and they want, you know, they find noises interfering with how they engage with the world, or too overwhelming, you can now invest in things like ear defenders for them. You can find peaceful locations where you can go. So this is something we do in the school holidays. Like, I deliberately, when we go out in the school holidays, we now know the area well enough to know where those paths less trod are, because it's overwhelming when we go to busy places. For my children, they don't like it. It becomes they become very distressed very quickly. They find it quite stressful. So we can tailor what we do and go and find somewhere where we know will be more peaceful, or go to those sort of busy places, popular places, but we can now go at times where it's not as busy. And in the home, we do things like create dens, or our children create dens, but it's about facilitating that and saying, yes, that's okay, and not insisting they come and sit in this particular space while they're doing their learning. So if my children want to read a book in a den, that's equally valuable as us curling up on the sofa, or us sitting together at a desk and creating our own stories. And giving them and personalizing a space for them. So I've written personalizing their bedroom. I mean, my children have all shared bedrooms at one point or another, and we've been able within those spaces to create a space that is just for an individual child to access. So they've got a place they can go to be quiet and to feel safe and rested. So if your child likes social interaction in a relaxed, low demand environment, so you might think there's a bit of a contradictory there, but there are children who really like social interaction, but again, they need something that's really relaxed and low demand, so they don't want to go to these groups where you sign up for classes, or those are because of the introduction of someone else telling them what to do. That's the demand that they're feeling. So we create like local home ed groups, just for socializing. So play, like go to the play park. And we've got a group near us that meet 2 times a week, and it's just different play parks every time, and everyone comes together and the kids play, and it's really lovely. Or invite other families if you're able to in your home for those personalised play dates, because creating the right environment for your child is what enables them to feel safe, enables them to feel relaxed, and that is what then leads to these optimal learning conditions, because when you feel safe and relaxed, you're actually able to engage your higher brain, which is where deep cognitive learning development happens. When you're feeling stressed because of your environment, for example, you are actually operating in your lower brain, which means that optimal learning is less likely to happen, because you're operating from a place of stress and fear, and you're sort of in a mode of like self-preservation and hyper alertness. So this enables us to create this environment where our children can flourish. Right, and this is the last one. So taking a look at rewards and punishment. So this can be a really tricky one, because as parents, the prevalent dominant way of parenting is through rewards and punishment, right from the naughty step when they are small. And it is something that is directly linked with schooling and how schooling operates. And this idea really that once they get to school, they need to be able to, in quotes, behave. They need to be able to do certain things like sit down, and they need to be able to do certain things like listen. They can't just respond to their natural impulse to get up and run around, for example. So behavioural systems in schools are necessary to keep children, and I say mainstream schools because there are self-directed learning communities where they take a very different approach. So I'm talking about mainstream schools, in order to keep children focused and maintain order. Because when you are, I don't know if any of you have ever thought about this, but when you are one adult with 30 children, there has to be a semblance of that adult, in order to take care of those children, needs to have some sort of control over what they're doing. Yeah, I don't know if any of you have ever thought about what it would be like to be left in a room with 30 children. Something for you to ponder. But this is why these behavioural systems are in place. They are used to externally motivate children to comply. So they are something that is outside of the child. That's the externally bit. And they are motivating the child to comply with the behaviour that we want to see, or the work that the teacher needs them to complete. So it includes punishments. Those are the really, really obvious ones, because they make you feel bad when you are punished for something, when you miss your playtime, or you have to write lines, or you have to go and sit outside the head teacher's office. They conjure up feelings for us, around shame and embarrassment. And it's really clear to see how that then manipulates our behaviour and encourages us not to do that again, because we don't want to feel that again. We don't want to be in that position again. Our children don't want to be, and it makes us feel really bad. But what it actually also does is it inhibits a child's natural curiosity, and it centres the reward as the goal. So looking at the rewards element, it's centering the reward as the goal, which in schools is what we want. We don't really want the reward to be the goal, but we want them to complete something in order to get the reward, and that will make them feel good about what they're doing. The flip side of that is that it makes everybody that didn't get the reward feel bad, which is how we can then link it to this idea of it actually not being a great thing, because somebody in that scenario is still feeling bad about not getting the reward, and then that's the motivator. I don't want to feel bad, I want to feel good. That's then becomes the motivator as well. So you've got that dual thing going on again. So rewards and punishments both are a tool that is used to manage behaviour, and particularly thinking about relationships. So this then affects the relationship that children have with the adults in the room, so the teachers, the people who are able to reward or punish children. And as I said, it inhabits a child's natural curiosity, because what happens in schools is they are deliberately saying, we want you to do this and not this. We want you to do the thing that you are going to get rewarded for, and we don't want you to do the thing you want to do. We want you to inhibit what you want to do. We want you to comply with what we want you to do. We don't want you to ask your own questions anymore. We need you to do this curriculum and this content, and you need to be focused on this. So it directly affects a child's natural curiosity, and our children learn that it is important to be successful, and they carry this, as I said, this shame of fear and punishment. But also, when you carry this idea, the importance of being successful, and you define that success in terms of grades, in terms of passing exams, maybe that then goes on in terms of having a high paid job, you can also feel uncertain about what happens if I don't achieve those things. What happens if I come home with a report card and I didn't get all A's, or I didn't, or it's worse, my report card is worse than the last report card. So it's very much attached to our feelings. It's very much attached to our relationships with other people, particularly for children, their relationships with adults. And it creates this competitive, hierarchical system which adds pressure and stress to the classroom environment for our children. It's actually a very, very good tool for the teachers, as I said, in terms of managing behaviour and work outcomes. Right, so we want to do something different, and I said I'd share a story with you. How do I get my child to do anything? Yeah, if you're not using like punishments and rewards, how are we going to get them to do anything? I'm going to leave this here while I just share a little story. So for us, the key moment when I started to think about our parenting actually happened quite relatively, I guess, soon in our parenting journey. My eldest was definitely 2, so somewhere within that year that he was 2, and I already had my second child because there were 20 months between them, and I was fortunate enough to have my mum and my sisters were both quite involved. They didn't really live nearby, but once a week my mum would come over and sort of help out for a day, and you know, I've got 2 sisters, and they would you know, pop over fairly regularly during that period of time. And what I noticed was, because I was traditionally going down the I need to direct my child's behaviour, I need to make sure he's doing what he's told, and therefore I was beginning to implement these punishments and rewards within our own home. And what I noticed was, or the moment of realization that came for me, was when my child was with his grandmother or with his aunts, they weren't doing that. They were having a really nice time with him, and they were enjoying their time with him, and he was enjoying their time with them. And then when he was with me, my focus was always on, he needs to behave, he needs to be a good child, you know, I need to teach him how to do the right things. And it actually was really miserable, and I wasn't enjoying my time with my child. And so we looked into what are our other options. Like, I don't want to do this anymore, this is really rubbish. And that quite often happens when parents move into home education, because what you're doing is now spending all your time with your children, and you create, so when I was talking about that rewards and punishments affecting relationships, this is what I mean. Because being with your child all the time, if your focus is on their behavior and making them do certain things, it's going to have an effect on your relationships, which will become very noticeable now you're spending all your time together. So we want to look at an alternative, because we want to actually make that time together enjoyable, and we want your relationships to be healthy. But this is something that can take time, and when I talk about time, I mean lots of time. We're so used to things being on a schedule, like by the end of next week we will have achieved this, and by the, you know, it comes back to that curriculum and that ladder thing again, by the end of this term we will have achieved this. So it takes time, but this is I believe the single most important thing you can do to restore a child's natural drive to learn, because it helps them shift from, instead of pleasing you all the time, instead of living in that space of shame or fear that they're not going to meet a certain expectation, they can actually really relax into, this is what I want to do right now. You know, their natural drive to explore the world around them without putting in this extra layer of, how is that going to be received, you know, by my parental figure. They can ask the questions that they find important. So they don't have to worry about if they're asking the wrong questions. They don't have to worry about if they ask a question that maybe you know, like I said, nonsensical, a little bit odd. They don't have to worry about if they ask a question that maybe is seen as inappropriate and be reprimanded for it. They can start to ask the questions they need to ask to better understand the world around them. They can ask to do the things that they find interesting. Again, instead of having that overlay of how is my caregiver going to respond to this, they can ask openly, you know, I want to do this, or can I play this game, without having to worry about how that's received. And those are the things where the intrinsic motivation, so instead of the external drive of punishments and rewards telling, you know, sort of steering them into what we think they should be doing, they can then start to think, I mean, they're not going to think in these terms, but what will happen is their natural curiosity will be valued, and that's their intrinsic motivation. It will return, it will grow, they will ask more questions, they will want to do more of the things that they find enjoyable, and they can flourish in an environment where they are respected and they are seen and heard and understood. So I called it time to connect and collaborate, because it is time to connect with them. Instead of trying to direct their behavior or direct what they're actually doing, it's time to start doing the things that they love. Doesn't matter what they are. Like I said at the beginning, could be gaming, could be ice skating, could be Pokemon Go, could be Lego. Start doing the things that they want to do, and in ways that they feel comfortable. So if they want to do it in a den, we do that in a den. If they want to do it curled up on the sofa, we do it curled up on a sofa. If they want to have music on at the same time because they like background noise, then we can facilitate those things to enable our children to feel more comfortable. And it's time to collaborate with them. So instead of telling them what we think they should be doing and then making them do that, it's time to think about how we can collaborate with them and find solutions together. And then that comes back to this taking time, because that's not an instant answer. You're not going to be able, you might be able to, but I'm going to say you're not going to be able to sit there and say, I want you to do X, Y, and Z. And then because you're using punishments and rewards, it happens. Like, that's the next step. Okay, I'm going to get a bag of buttons, chocolate buttons or something at the end of this, so I'll do it. Because you're collaborating and everybody needs to be on board with the idea, you have to find solutions together. That takes time. It takes discussion. It might take coming back to, like, next week, have you thought more about this idea? And can we try this? It's all about more time, much more relaxed, much slower. So it's time. So the key words there are connection with your child, doing the things they love, and collaborating, taking time for conversations and finding solutions together. So I've got 2 handy hints for you about how you can make this transition if you're not feeling like literally ditching those things is a good idea. And sometimes it's not, can be very unsettling for children, particularly if you've used a curriculum at home and you've recognized that maybe philosophically that's not what you want to do anymore, or your children are resisting that. It's not always a good idea to just say, right, today that's it, we're never doing that again, because that can be quite unsettling for your children. So the idea is this: you simply say yes more to your children. So when they ask that question, about, I always come back to birds out the window. If you've heard me talk before, if they ask a question about the bird out the window, you stop what you're doing and answer the question about the bird out the window. Or if they're saying their hands hurt and they don't want to do whatever it is you're doing anymore, then say, fine, let's take a pause, let's stop doing that, let's go do something else. It's simply about saying yes more to our children's ideas. Mummy, can I play Lego? Mummy, can I watch Netflix? Mummy, can my daughter today has already said, Mummy, can we play TF2 together on the computer? And my other daughter asked me if we could do something, and I can't quite remember what it is, but my answer is yes, we'll do those things, let's do that today. And then this is my second tip: reflect often. Reflect often on why you are here. What led you to this point? Remember the reason that you are home educating, or remember the reason that you are considering unschooling, or you are moving towards unschooling. Because when things do get bumpy and when you're finding it frustrating because you can't make your child do something you want them to do in a moment because you're trying to connect and collaborate now instead of using rewards and punishment, have in mind what brought you to this point and why you're here. The second thing is record moments of connection and joy. You don't have to do this all the time. Maybe in the beginning you want to look at that weekly, because we want to focus on what is happening that is positive, what's changing in our lives, and how is this journey having a really positive impact on our family and our children. So record those moments of joy where you've had loads of fun together, or where your child has really enjoyed something, maybe that was unexpected, that you didn't know about before, and those moments of connection that you've had with your children. Because then when we talk about doing more of the things that they love, those are the things we want to then keep doing until they're not things we love anymore and we move on to something else. Capturing those aha moments, both your child's, so when they come and tell you something and you think, wow, I didn't know you knew that, or I didn't know you could do that. Capture those moments. You can do that through photographs, or you could make a note in a journal, anything like that. But also the aha moments for yourself, the moments where you are, you know, sat at 8:30 in the evening and you realise that you, or that your child is actively learning to read as you're sitting together. Those moments where you recognise that whilst they are, you know, baking cakes, that they are actually also doing maths. Those realisations for you. You don't have to share those with those children, with your children, but those moments where you begin to recognise what learning is happening every day, in every way, in every place. So catch those moments for yourself and share your revelations. You don't have to openly share those with everyone. Some people like to keep a blog, or they have like a private Facebook page where they have for family and friends, but it might just be like you know, saving photos into a Google Drive for yourself, or as I said, journaling is quite popular. It's just being able to take a moment to say, this is the revelation I had, and then put it somewhere. It might just be that you text your partner and say, this has just happened, or I've just realized this. You know, share that with somebody else. Share your journey. So those are my 2 handy hints. Say yes more with your children and reflect often. I'm going to stop my share there. And then we have this weird moment where I realise there are still people here, which is nice, because all I've been able to see for the last half an hour or so is myself. So I'm happy to take some questions. I can see that the chat's been going, but I haven't had it on while I've been talking, because it's actually, I find that quite distracting. So I maybe should have mentioned that at the beginning. So if there are any questions, I don't know if Amy, you've been looking at the chat. Is that can you pull questions out for me?
We've not had any questions, but there's been lots of conversation. I mean, everyone's nodding, agreeing, and bringing some really excellent things to the table there. So we've got things like such a powerful story when you were tearing up due to the fact that you were worried about, like, the
hoping no one noticed the tearing up.
Yeah, the Disney dad situation where he gets to have all the fun and spend all the money, and you're there feeling like you've got to be the responsible adult in the relationship. It's nice that that you shared that with us, and that you were able to sort of say how you address that balance. And what else have we got here? If I scroll back, still not become truly intrinsically motivated, inspired by the rewards. That was Heidi's comment on
interesting, because I think my point was that rewards actually hinder intrinsic motivation.
Yeah,
because you're still the one trying to manipulate what they're doing by giving them a reward, actually. So although we see it as a good thing, because we go, oh, they're being rewarded, they get a sticker, that's lovely, or they get a packet of buttons, or maybe that levels up as the children level up, they get money, it's quite often teenagers get financial rewards, but what we're doing is we're still trying to manipulate what we want them to do by saying, if you do that, this is what happens at the end. I mean, that's be it whether it's a reward or a consequence, you're stating, I want you to do this, and I'm going to make you do that by either
I am quite guilty myself,
or rewarding them, and that's different to say, so we were put in that bracket when you say to them, oh, your picture's really good, when they come for adult approval, which is a reward in itself. It might be a cat, which is a reward in itself, when they come for approval. But it's different within the context when my child maybe comes to me and says, do you like my picture? And I genuinely like her picture, and I genuinely feel excited about what she's presenting me with, and I genuinely say, that's really lovely, I've not seen you do that before, I really like this element, and that's different to me constantly saying, wow, I love your drawing, because I want them to carry, I mean, drawings maybe not, I mean, art is very valuable, but drawing, yeah, so it's a very different feel to when you're purposely saying, I think your drawing's amazing, because you want them to keep doing it so that they can improve on it and they can keep doing the next amazing thing. So it can be nuanced in that way. But if you know that you are trying to teach your child something by asking them to do something and rewarding them at the end, that still, for me, comes under extrinsically motivating them. You are the one who is trying to get them to do something. It hasn't come from within themselves.
Rachel had quite a lot to sort of say, and I think from what I can read, Rachel was teaching, and she said a lot about how the behavioural management makes her shudder now. So that was quite interesting. Lots of empathy from the chat there. We've got Megan sort of saying that she really found that interesting. The motivation behind the behaviour management kind of helped in your talk. And Rachel is now saying, my 11-year-old tried a lesson in secondary school last year. He came out and said, they're all being manipulated, Mum. The teacher said, would you like to write the date? It wasn't exactly a choice I could make, was it? Needless to say, he didn't go back.
Yeah, and I mean, that's one of the other things that can happen with us as parents as well. We begin to see that, like, we ask our children questions all the time. Would you like to get in the bath? Now, if you're in the habit of bath time being every night, it's not really a choice. Like, and children, like what would happen if your child said no? And there are a lot of children out there who like to say no quite a lot, and I embrace these children and say, yay them, you know, they already know what they do and do not want to do. They're already sort of feeling their autonomy in this way, and they have, there's a lot of power in that, actually. So I'm
I'll be charging you for nose pegs, Heidi. My son likes to say no to everything. He's got PDA profile.
Yeah,
so he says no to showers, no to baths.
So I've got two children who technically have, or they do have a PDA profile. So I'm very familiar with children who are very secure in their own drive for autonomy. And I don't see that as a negative thing. I see that as a really positive thing, actually. But what you do as a parent then is you start to reassess, what am I asking my children to do? What do they really have choice about, and what do they not have choice about? So you don't ask the question, you know, do you want to go out, when actually, you know, I'm really sorry, I can't leave you at home on your own, and we need to take out your older brother, so there isn't really a choice. So I don't give them a choice, but that's not to say that I then manipulate their behaviour, or I don't take into account that they feel really rubbish about that and they don't want to go. You know, we find other ways of saying, well, actually, if we're going out and I've got to take your brother, what should we do while we're out, you know, while he's doing that class? You know, should we go to the nearby play park? And then that sort of helps, you know, it's that connect with them. What is it they're going to enjoy when they're out? Are they going to enjoy going to the park? Do they want to feed the ducks? Do they want to go and get a hot chocolate at the cafe? You know, thinking through when they don't have a choice, but thinking through how can we collaborate with them and connect with them where they are and come up with a solution where we recognize that this isn't their, you know, what they want to be doing, but how can we turn it into something that they're going to enjoy, and they're going to hopefully want to come. It's a really different way of being, and communicating with our children and being together.
Very difficult to go from that authoritative role of you will do XYZ to being the more unschooled parent.
I think if you have a PDA, if you have a PDA child, they can sometimes drag you there, because you don't often have much choice when you have a child who's everything is very overwhelming. So I completely relate to you.
Chasing an 11-year-old around the house so that you can strip him naked to get him in the shower can be fun.
Yeah, you see, that's the sort of thing that I think we've got to a point where we've managed to let that go now. In fact, I said to my 13-year-old this morning, we've got friends coming to stay in a couple of days. Do you think you're going to recognize this? It's not you're going to have a bath. It's, do you think you could consider having a shower? And he sort of took a breath and he said, I'll do it tomorrow if you run the bath for me. Okay, deal. And that for me, that's our way forward.
Skills.
Yeah,
brilliant.
Yeah. But equally he might have said no, but we won this time round, he was in the zone, and it was okay. But it's a lot to do with that connection, because I know if I say to him Wednesday night, bath night, that's too much stress, that's no, that's an instant no. So it's that connection, knowing your child, knowing how to communicate with them, and genuinely, yes, he genuinely has a choice. I'm not in a position to force my 13-year-old into a bath or a shower, so it has to be his choice. So he won. Heidi Conway says he won too, because he still has power and he made the choice. I've just opened it up. So that's that collaboration, but that's taken years. So I always talk about time. It's not that's not going to change over night, particularly with relationships, because there's a lot of undoing on two parties of how things have been, and re-establishing and feeling certain that it's not going to revert back to how it was. So feeling certain and safe in that new parenting space, the new relationship space. Let's not call it a parenting space, because it's a co-relationship, new relationship space.
Can I ask, how often did you maybe say to yourself, there's no big deal? You're in a habit of asking. So I had a mother-daughter, and the son came with them for a visit today. And when the son left, when they all left, I said, look, do you need anything for your journey? It was another hour and a half till they got home. And I said, do you want any water, or do you want anything before you go? And the mother said, oh, we've got something, but boy, 11-year-old boy, you better fill your water bottle up. And he goes, no, I'm okay. And she said, fill your water bottle up. I said, we've got lovely water, and he said, no, I'm okay. And the mother kept on going. I said, I just put my hand up and I said, it's okay, it's all right. Because she's just new she just left school last year. I said, it's okay. And so it's okay, because he can get an hour and a half away. Yep. He's just finished 500 mils or a liter of water. So he's physically fine. He's not going to dehydrate. He's not running home, and that would be a different story, going, yes, well, I think your mum's fine, maybe get some water on the way. But so how many times did you need to say to yourself, hang on, it's no big deal? If they miss a bath one night, it's no big deal, or clean it, so at what point, because even when hygiene and health and all of that's in play as well.
Yeah, constantly. I don't know, that's like you're asking me to put a number on it, all the time, always asking, is this important? Or in the situation that you've just outlined, the 11-year-old doesn't have to have the water. I could have the water. If I felt that was really important, even though he'd said no to his own water bottle, I could be carrying extra water, so that if or when the moment arose where they realised they'd made the wrong decision and actually water was required, without shame and embarrassment, I have water that I can share with them. So which is again quite different, because traditionally many parents would say, well, you made the decision not to have water, you'll just have to be thirsty. And that's not sort of the position that we take. You know, the number of times I've carried coats and jumpers because I think my children are going to be cold in the snow or in the winter, and they insist that they're fine, and actually they are. I don't even know what they're doing or what their body temperatures, but actually they are fine. But I've taken their coats or their jumpers so that they're available if they're not fine. In fact, one of my daughters will happily run around in the cold, but then as soon as we like get back into the car, it's almost as soon as she stopped running around, she suddenly, like, there's definitely a sensory thing going on, and she suddenly is like freezing. So then we've got things in the car, you know, we've got blankets and coats in the car, and you just like cover her up and, you know, put the heating on and things like that. So it's very different to that idea of saying, well, hang on, you decided not to bring your coat, so you're just going to have to be cold. That's not something that I do.
Still doing it because you care as the parent, but it's also your fear. It's our fear. So if we feel better taking a coat for them, then we take responsibility for our own fear rather than be worried the whole time that they're cold. Oh no, you should have got, and you're berating, you should have taken, because I wouldn't have fear if you took your jumper. You know, you're then just making sure that you're comfortable until you don't need to do that anymore because they know. And
because they know, or you know them well enough to know actually they don't need a jacket. They were right. You know, I don't need to carry that around. Now I've dealt with
my fear. Yeah, that's cool. And then when you do share it, if you share it without the shaming and berating, even in, you know, Maslow's hierarchy of control, that they've got their basic needs met and they know that they are secure and safe, that there's someone always at this age that I'm at, there's someone to look after me. So you actually, there's unconscious or subconscious learning and feeling of safety and connection in that relationship. And that's why it takes time. I think you're meaning there. That's good. Very good. So any more questions from anyone here at all? Any comments, any things to share? Maybe if you just want to shout out or write in the comments what was the biggest value, the biggest point that you got from the session. And then I think Heidi's got another question to leave you with.
Oh, yes, I'll leave you with a good one.
Yes, but
thank you, Megan.
Yeah, big smile. Anybody else? Lucy, what about you? Carol, Anya? You might be, because we're home educators, we may be driving or so.
Busy. Or making food. Making food is my, I think I spend most of my time making food.
Right.
I'm going to leave people with like a question or a task, I guess. But if this is something that's new to you, so one of the things you can do is just sit with the information. Maybe since it's all recorded, you can come back to it, listen to it again, just think it over, and take your time to maybe wrestle with those ideas or think about what that might actually mean for you and your family. But as an action, as something you can actually do if you're feeling ready to take that step, is to think about one thing you can change, and do it. Be bolder and do it. So that's my sort of action step that I would recommend for you guys. What's the one thing you can change, and go and do that. Oh, Lucy, that's an interesting and very long and complicated question to answer for the last one. Do you know, I'm just going to re-divert you. So for the sake of the recording, the question says, what if your child wants to watch TV all day or gaming all day? If I let him, he would, but of course I don't. So that's a really common question. That's something I hear all the time. I have a webinar that you can purchase if you want the full answer. So it's a webinar co-hosted so with myself and Dr. Naomi Steele, who was also here the other, oh my gosh, I've just amalgamated our names, Dr. Naomi Fisher sorry, who was also here the other day, and has a recording of a session that she did for the Learn Free conference the other day. And you've written on the end, but of course I don't, which is interesting because actually in this household, as part of our connection, trusting our children and them following their interests, that is something that does happen a lot in our house. There is a lot of technology and a lot of access to that technology and a lot of time spent on technology. So if you want to find out more about how we sort of square that peg and reframe that in our minds and what that looks like in our homes, you can find that. It's on, you can find it on, I'm going to write it in the chat, nurturingneurodiversity.org. If you want to look at the whole, checking I spelled that right, if you want to look at the whole webinar. That's a big one to end on. To sum it up.
I was starting to type that I will ask Heidi Steele to comment, like to connect with you personally.
Yeah, you can do that. Feel free to do that via the social media links at the beginning. You can do that. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thanks. Well, thanks, Lucy. Thank you, Heidi. Thank you, Amy, and everyone that attended here today. Hurrah, hurrah. Fits perfectly with what's ahead too, with our own journeys and the rest of this conference. So look forward to seeing you in other rooms. Okay.
Yeah, lovely. See you later. Bye.